Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. This show is being recorded on September 25, 2023. I'm Asbed Bedrossian.
And this is Hovik Manucharyan.
And today's major topic is obviously one thing, Azerbaijan's attack on Artsakh last week. To talk about this, we have with us Hrant Mikaelian, who is a political scientist and multidisciplinary researcher in social sciences based in Yerevan. He is also a senior researcher at the Caucasus Institute. Hello and welcome, Hrant.
Hi, Hrant.
Hi, guys. Hi, Asbed. Hi, Hovik.
Well, there's only really one topic this week. Azerbaijan attacked and invaded Artsakh on September 19th around 1 p.m. Our guests have consistently highlighted on this show the goal of the Aliyev regime to depopulate Artsakh through soft means, such as gerrymandering, investing financial resources around Artsakh, etc. But it seems like Aliyev was in a hurry. And for weeks now, analysts and observers have warned that Azerbaijan was preparing for a military aggression. So there it was on September 19. The narrative that Turkish President Erdogan presented was that Aliyev and Pashinyan were deeply concerned with the new presidential election in Artsakh, and so Azerbaijan went on the offensive. Make no mistake about this, the situation is extremely dire. On September 20th, after 24 hours of intensive warfare, the authorities in Artsakh capitulated. They were forced to go to Yevlakh on September 21, Armenian Independence Day, to sign away the sovereignty of Artsakh. The points of negotiation forced by Azeris through military means are disarming and disbanding of the Artsakh Defense Army, disbanding of other elements of Artsakh statehood, and the so-called reintegration into Azerbaijan of Artsakh population without any status. First of all, I want to note that Artsakh was never part of an independent Azerbaijan, and so there's no such thing as reintegration. Aliyev doesn't consider it a positive for his image or even doable to massacre 120,000 people in Artsakh. So they're forcing discussions on dissolving and assimilating the Armenians inside Azerbaijan. Hrant, is this the end of Artsakh as we know it?
Unfortunately, it is. And I think it's a very big question if any of Armenians will remain in Artsakh, because today, at least as of evening, some 7,000 people have left Artsakh, and there was a huge traffic jam on the road from Stepanakert to Goris, and then it goes on through whole Armenia, because these roads are not designed to have so many cars there. And another issue is that yet only those are living Artsakh who have lived in Martakert and in other regions which have been taken by Aliyev regime, but most probably people who are living in Stepanakert will live as well in foreseeable future. Most of the foreign actors, and unfortunately Armenian government too, want as many people to stay there as possible. They want them to stay so that it does not seem as it's ethnic cleansing in which they have their own guilt. But people do not want to stay under Azerbaijan's control, because for them, Azerbaijan is a country which has consistently attacked and dehumanized them. And the latest attack took place just 1 week ago. So it's a very dimmed future for people of Artsakh. Yet they don't know what they will face tomorrow, in a week, in a month, in a year. But let's hope they will find their way. They will be safe. Let's hope there will be no more deaths. At least that we can hope, but still cannot be sure.
Well, there was more bad news today when I believe a gas station or a gas tanker exploded, essentially, as people were queuing up to leave or to run away. So there were a lot of people concentrated around this distribution point for gasoline, and it exploded. And apparently we have hundreds of deaths and or casualties or injuries. But Hrant, my understanding is that trying to analyze the situation, there is no question that the Artsakh soldiers fought valiantly. The just amount of deaths that we have, officially it's only 200 dead and 400 wounded, but unofficially, and that's only the data from the first or second day, unofficially it's 500 servicemen dead with 600 missing, and we're not even talking about civilians, which we saw leaked videos of more beheadings and more brutalities against civilians. I want to ask you, when Armenia officially declared that it's not involved, it has been declaring that ever since 2020, but the first day of the fighting, it said, our borders with Azerbaijan are calm and we're not involved in any of the fighting in Artsakh. Isn't this basically dooming the people of Artsakh? Wasn't it inevitable that this was going to be the outcome?
Well, since we had this very unstable status quo since November 2020, there was a question if Russian peacekeepers are powerful enough to keep the status quo stable. That's first question. And if no, which side will turn over this status quo? Because in reality, this status quo was not completely acceptable for both sides. If Armenia was capable, probably not under Pashinyan's rule, but still, if Armenia was capable, at some point Armenia would try to reverse this situation. Unfortunately, Pashinyan has done as much as possible so that Armenia is weak, unable to change anything, and Armenia is, let's say, incapable of somehow keeping military balance and keeping security balance. So it's completely dependent on the foreign context. Now, that's one side. Another side is that on its side, Azerbaijan also viewed the situation as temporary and first tried to change it in May 2021 when they attacked Armenia. Then several other attacks followed. And then after the beginning of Russian-Ukrainian war, Azerbaijan started testing Russians and Armenians in Artsakh. And at that time, Pashinyan has already declared that he is not going to involve. And after, let's say, August 2022, when Azerbaijan took over Berdzor and destroyed the Lachin corridor, as it was initially, since then, we can say that Artsakh was sitting on a time bomb. Of course, we all hoped that it's not going to happen, but Azerbaijan has close border with Armenia, between Artsakh and Armenia, and tried to keep Artsakh as weak as possible, because this blockade was, as we now understand, was aimed to weaken Artsakh, so that at some point when Azerbaijan attacks, Artsakh will be incapable to contradict. And so last month, Azerbaijan was obviously preparing. The only question was where and how, and now we know the answer. And last but not least, anytime Pashinyan was accepting Azerbaijan's conditions, for example, in October 2022, Pashinyan has accepted Azerbaijan's conditions on Alma Ata declaration, which, by the way, now we know Armenia did not sign in 1991, but Pashinyan accepted it in 2022. Then the blockade followed 2 months later. Then in April 2022, Pashinyan first on April 18th, spoke on Azerbaijan's territorial integrity in Armenian parliament. On April 2023, Aliyev has closed Hakkari Bridge. And then after next statements of Pashinyan, which took place in late May 2022, in the beginning of June, already Aliyev has completely closed any connection between Armenia and Artsakh. So I think it's not coincidence. And again, quoting Erdogan, that they were both concerned, that Pashinyan knew about the military action and so on. We can say that in reality, all of the actors involved, including Turkey, Azerbaijan, Russia, Armenian government, and in reality the West, maybe excluding France, most probably, were part of this game. Unfortunately, Artsakh fell in a very unlucky situation, both with Armenia and geopolitics and timing.
You mentioned that Armenia did not sign the 1991 declaration, as we now know. Can you provide more information about that?
Well, there was discussion, and in parliament, Artur Khachaturian, representative of Dashnakhtitsun, he quoted all documents which Armenia signed and ratified in 1991, 1992. He said, Alma Ata declaration is not in the list, while there were some other agreements, including, for example, the Minsk Treaty of forming of CIS. Armenia signed that and ratified that document, but not Alma Ata Treaty. And then the same was said by Levon Zurabian, who is representative of Armenian National Committee, which is opposition party long time, and which Pashinyan has also been member of. So he has been a member of the same party as Pashinyan, and he said Armenia did not sign that document during Levon Bedrossian's rule, and did not sign it later as well. So in reality, the argument that Armenia has recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity in 1991 by this declaration is fake, first. Second, the argument is that Alma Ata declaration is framework for Armenian independence is also fake. This is second. And third, all of this discussion is aimed at changing Armenians' declaration of independence, where Artsakh is mentioned and the Western Armenia is mentioned as well. So Pashinyan wants to reverse the whole foundation of Armenian independence.
So, Hrant, I'd like to take us back to September 19th and 20th when Azerbaijan attacked. And basically, Pashinyan and his cronies spent their whole day on the phone with European leaders updating them on the situation. The United Nations Security Council had a meeting to discuss the situation, and the Pashinyan administration was deeply embarrassed when Foreign Minister Mirzoyan's address begging for a UN-mandated presence to secure the rights and safety of Artsakhtsis and prevent genocide was negated by Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Bayramov, who quoted Pashinyan himself saying that he believes Artsakhtsis will be treated well and that there's no imminent danger to them. Mirzoyan was seen on video furiously exiting the UNSC hall. How is it possible for this Armenian government to be so deeply disorganized, incompetent, and embarrass the whole nation in front of the whole world like that? How is this possible?
Let's say what has been perceived as a conspiracy theory that this government is infiltrated by Turkish agents of Turkish intelligence services, MIT, and the Turkish agents include Pashinyan himself. This speech, which would be perceived as a conspiracy theory, I think we have no right to think of it this manner anymore, because Pashinyan has clearly gave the strongest argument to Bayramov to reject the resolution. I don't think that would be any way possible, and even if accepted, that would change many things. But still, in any occasion, Pashinyan has played on Turkish side. And we can remember from the very beginning, and unfortunately, I have no right to think that it's just coincidence. Because on one hand, Pashinyan is incompetent, but on another hand, you cannot find anyone more competent in keeping the power as Pashinyan is. And if so, it means that he's not stupid and he's not ineffective. He's ineffective, of course, in protecting Armenian interests, but if he is ineffective only in one way, but very effective in all other ways, then I don't think it's coincidence. So I think this government has connections to Turkey, has direct connections to Turkey, and most probably works in Turkey. At least some members, including Pashinyan himself. That's what I think, and I have many arguments for that, but I don't want to talk all of them.
So are Pashinyan and Mirzoyan not on the same page, or are they uncoordinated with purpose so that they undermine each other and nothing gets achieved in the UN Security Council?
You know, what I said is, of course, my guess. I don't have documents, and people who claim they have, they did not show me. Although the Union of Armenian Intelligence Services officers, retired officers, I mean, they have declared 1 year ago that they have information, direct information, which affirms that Pashinyan works in Turkey. Again, I did not see the documents, so it is speculation. Still, this is what we know. At least we cannot ignore this information anymore. Now, regarding Mirzoyan, again, this would be speculation because I don't know from inside. And here we have, let's say, a very fluid situation which changes all the time. First of all, this speech, Mirzoyan's speech, was aimed at domestic audience.
Right.
And if we look at, for example, he left the hall when Bayramov was speaking, did not put in questions, did not participate in any way. So it's a weak position, I think. And I think these arguments were mostly aimed at domestic audience. That's what I think. But again, it's already a speculation because so many changes, so many unknowns that I want people to know that it's just a guess.
We talked to Ms. Zuniga Ajanian about 2 weeks ago, and we were discussing the previous UNSC meeting on the topic of Karabakh. And I think that meeting was August 16, but correct me if I'm wrong. But she said exactly the same thing. She said, basically, this is a theater for the purpose of showing Armenian public that something is being done about them. But there are zero consequences to Azerbaijan, Turkey, or anybody else for all these war crimes, essentially.
Well, Asbed, if you remember, a week before, actually 5 days before Azerbaijan attack, Yuri Kim from the U.S. State Department said multiple times, in the sternest possible language, that we will not tolerate any military attack on the people of Karabakh, as she put it. So yes, but and then just the day after it happened, the U.S. downgraded its language again to that of deep concern, and I believe the day following, or on the 22nd, didn't the European Union sign another agreement for gas with Azerbaijan?
Exactly. They did not wait a day, and they decided that they should affirm that economic relations are on the table and are most important. And European Union wanted to have a common statement on situation in Artsakh. And then, as they reported, Hungary has blocked. And then we knew that it's not just Hungary. There were some discussions, and then Borrell decided to make a statement himself. But anyway, what's the price of all these statements? Same as you quoted US. I think it's just miserable talk, let's say, because it has no value. Only Armenians who love to hear strong words against Azerbaijan, they are pleased with these wordings, but nothing else. And this is even bigger problem because Armenians get fooled with all this narrative that there is some international community which cares of human rights. We see that it's completely fake. International community does not care of human rights and does that even less than in 1915. So that it's a big issue.
So Hrant, the mass exodus is now picking up pace very rapidly. I think that in just one day already more than 6,000 people have exited. People have their own private car. They are just jumping in it with only their clothes on their backs, and there's also buses that are being used, I believe, by the Russian peacekeepers. Many international media, I think, incorrectly in their headlines describe the situation as Armenians can't imagine being part of Azerbaijan, where I think the situation is more dire. I think that this is really a forced, essentially, depopulation of Artsakh. And through all means, I mean, people are forgetting that for 9 months, these people were essentially blockaded and people didn't have any food. The electricity only, just yesterday, they turned on electricity by disconnecting it from Armenia and connecting it to the Azerbaijani power grid. But now I think it's a moot point because everyone is leaving. But what I wanted to ask is, what can be salvaged of this? I mean, I think that many people fear that if Artsakh is completely depopulated, it will mean a complete genocide. It will mean very little chance of return. But at the same time, we see, beheadings, we see children being murdered, and we expect that Armenians in Artsakh are going to take Azerbaijani passports, potentially serve in the Azerbaijani army after all this, or essentially forget their language and speak Azeri. What can be salvaged from all of this today? How do you see things developing?
This is a very big question, and I was thinking over and over on that. Which option is better for people of Artsakh? Of course, they should decide it themselves, either to stay or leave, because after all of that, no one has a right to tell them what to do. At least I do not give myself the right to tell them what to do. But anyway, let's try to analyze. First of all, I think people of Artsakh, at least those who still have their homes, because those who left today, most of them are people who have left their homes, who have lived in Martakert region and so on. So people who live in Stepanakert today, they are still there, most of them. Now, talking of them who still have their homes in Stepanakert and in Martuni and in Askeran, so these people, what should they do? First of all, I think that the best decision for them would be to stay together. So either to stay all together there, or to emigrate again all together. Because if they split, those who will remain, which will obviously be a small minority, they will be first of all under bigger threat, under bigger pressure from Azerbaijani side, and also they will be used as a propaganda tool for Azerbaijan, which will be used against Armenia and against Artsakh over and over. And of course, Azerbaijan will create this fake narrative of 30,000 Armenians, which it has used for a long time. But anyway, it depends whether this narrative is true or not. So that's the first thing. So I think they should stay together or live together. That's first thing. Second is whether them to stay or to live. It depends on what exactly are Azerbaijani goals, what kind of Russian or maybe some other mission we can expect there, and what chances they have to keep at least cultural autonomy, maybe not formal but informal. Who will be, for example, if they stay, let's say Stepanakert is left there. First of all, will they have uninterrupted connection with Armenia afterwards? First, so will they have right to leave if they need? Will they get compensation for their property? Will they have the possibility of taking all of their properties? And then will they be able, for example, to elect their own mayor? And so on. There are many questions. And because I don't have all of this information, and most probably Armenia's current government has, they know it better, but I'm not sure they will make the best decision. That's another issue, because obviously Pashinyan does not want to see Artsakhdsis here, although he cannot not let them in as well. But anyway, Artsakhdsis are now in very, let's say, unstable situation when no one wants to see them, because everyone, I mean state actors, everyone is guilty here. Maybe again, except to France. I don't know.
Hrant, you mentioned a number of the issues that need to be resolved for Artsakhtsis. What do we know about the agreements that are being reached in Yevlakh, where their authorities are currently negotiating with the Azeri authorities?
They did not disclose the results of the agreements. Moreover, on the first day, they declared that there is no agreement. But in fact, we see that things started moving over, and the things are the following. First, the defense army of Artsakh has been disbanded. So it's the first term, and the weapons have been passed to Azerbaijan, or at least they have been passed to Russian peacekeepers, and passage to Azerbaijan will follow, most probably. That's first. Second, people got right to leave Azerbaijan. Third, Azerbaijan yet does not give the right to leave for commanders and for top persons from Artsakh and military. And there have been talks that there are 300 or 400 people in the list, which is a big issue, I think. I think it's extremely big issue. And the rest is, at least during the, let's say, the short-term period, the people will get some humanitarian aid to compensate the blockade. It's small compensation because what we have seen, the amount of humanitarian aid is very small. But again, it's something. Then Azeri representative said that Azerbaijan will not physically enter Stepanakert until 2025. That's what they said. By the way, Azerbaijan has entered Martakert today, but they said Azerbaijan will not enter Stepanakert physically until 2025 again. I think until November 10, 2025. So at least people in Stepanakert have 2 years to live. Again, Azerbaijan might fool people, and I think most people will not believe them. But at least that's what has been said. And what we have heard from rumors is that Russian peacekeepers want at least 30,000 people to stay, to say that their mission is justified, so that they can stay for, as they say, for 10 years. Again, no one believes in these guarantees, and people are just thinking how they will find their new home and new life, begin new life, because anyway, if you know that you have to leave, you are starting thinking of that from the point you know it is inevitable. So I don't think people will stay 2 more years, but at least this option theoretically exists as of now. That's what I know about these agreements.
And given what you said about how Pashinyan feels about people relocating to Armenia, what accommodations will there be for 120,000 refugees in Armenia, or 100,000, or 60,000?
Well, again, it depends how many people will move and how quickly they will move. That's first thing. Second thing is if they have their properties in Armenia or if they have relatives. At least some people have relatives. Then there are organizations aiding, and some people who have properties which is not used. They might also share it for some time, but again, it's not a solution. What Pashinyan said is that we are going to use the hotels and let's say B&Bs and so on. So we will rent the rooms, but we understand it's not a solution. It might be temporary solution. We know late September, October, November, let's say up until June or May, at least up until May, it's not a tourist season. Yeah, so theoretically, you can have an agreement with these properties for low price and resolve the issue somehow. Then you need to construct new houses. And I hope at least that they will stay in Armenia, which is again a big issue, a big question. Let's put it this way. Pashinyan has removed, there is a thing since Soviet times in Armenia, there was a thing called the exit visa. So he is removing the exit visa since January 2024, 3 months later. So some people connected this to Artsakh refugee flow because we know some people from Artsakh have moved previously to the south of Russia, Stavropol and Pyatigorsk towns, and there is already rather big Artsakhi diaspora. So I think Pashinyan is expecting them to move. Also, we know that Artsakhi people, of course, they don't trust Russians anymore, but also they are very deeply obsessed about Armenia because their expectations of Armenia and of Russia are completely different. Armenia is homeland, Russia is not. So anyway, they might decide that it's not worth staying in Armenia. At least I have heard from many people. And in Armenia's best interest, it would be to keep this flow in Armenia, keep this flow in different towns of Armenia and in villages as much as possible, and as much as possible away from Yerevan. That's what is my thought. At least we have heard that Samvel Karapetyan, the largest Armenian businessman in Russia, has declared that he is ready to give homes to 1,000 people in Tashir town in Lori. So this is one of solutions. So I think businesses will also participate. But anyway, overall landscape is unclear because what I have said, most of those are temporary solutions. And let's hope also for compensations, maybe some aid from international organizations. But here is another question. Are these people refugees or internally displaced? From what I heard from my friend who works in Ministry of Territorial Administration of Armenia, is that the previous flow was considered internally displaced persons or IDPs, not the refugees. And when I asked why, I was told that those people had Armenian passports So even those, despite the fact that Pashinyan has recognized Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan, these people are not recognized as refugees. At least we will see what will happen now, but previously they have not been recognized as refugees. So it's another issue because international organizations might not provide help to them. And let's see, it also, of course, depends, it vastly depends on the work of Armenian government, on diplomatic work, on construction of homes, of new settlements, maybe. I think Gyumri could get second life if people from Stepanakert would be brought there and new houses built or some old houses repaired and so on. So I think in reality, we could save many settlements in Armenia by populating Artsakis there and keeping them, let's say, big portions all together, but not all of them together. So, and also, of course, you should find more or less adequate places so that people, for example, who have worked in a rural site should have more or less adequate climate situation in Armenia. But if all of that fulfilled, I think this might be an option for people. Again, it depends on Armenian government vastly.
Let's move to, I guess, the blame games that are happening between Putin and Pashinyan. So yesterday, September 24, as the exodus of Artsakh Armenians was picking up, Pashinyan felt it necessary to make a public statement about Armenia's independence. The speech appeared intended to talk about Armenia's sovereignty and independence, but as we said, Pashinyan several times included a great deal about Armenia's relationship with Russia in there. Pashinyan confirmed that Armenia had decided to pass a Rome Statute, which is essentially the statute that establishes the International Criminal Court, when, according to Pashinyan, it became apparent that Armenia's security partnership is not meeting its needs. I don't know how this is tied to each other, but that's what he mentioned. He went further to blame the Russian peacekeepers for what is going on in Artsakh. And of course, he blamed the Azerbaijanis for a policy of ethnic cleansing, but also said that the Russian peacekeepers are responsible. So I don't know if he indirectly or directly is blaming the Russians as well. And just today, the Russian foreign ministry responded with a very strong rebuke, saying that it was only due to the personal intervention of Putin in the 2020 war that stopped it where it did. And essentially, if Putin had not intervened, then we might have had what we have today in 2020. The Russian statement also stated that Armenian leadership is trying to sever centuries-old, in quotes, ties between Russians and Armenians at the instigation of the West. What's your assessment about this back and forth between Pashinyan and Russia and the Russian MFA, essentially? What dangers or what do you foresee coming from this?
In reality, your speech included many questions, and I'll try to pass over them as quickly as possible because the issue is broad and important. So let me start with the thing who is to blame. And I think both are right. Both Putin and Pashinyan share equal blame for what happened, for that ethnic cleansing, and equal guilt, because Pashinyan, if he could do anything to bring Artsakh to current situation, he did it. And then Putin, who had the peacekeepers there, had no right to leave people like that. I mean, until now, we all talk about peacekeepers' failure in Krajina, in Serbian Krajina, in Croatia in 1996, but Russian peacekeepers in Artsakh did even worse this time. So that's first.
We should also mention that I think there are different numbers, like 5 or 7 or even more peacekeepers also died when Azerbaijan attacked.
Yeah, and from what we know now, at least Armenian sources, very different sources, prove that, and some Russian sources also, is that those most of those peacekeepers were together. They have seen Azerbaijani soldiers' atrocities against peaceful population. They have documented these atrocities, and that's why they have been killed. So this is important. Now let's move forward. Another component is political, because peacekeeping forces and any use of force in the world is politically driven. So when we expect that Russia will use the force, we are not expecting that Russia will use the force only because it's written on the paper. No one uses the force because it's written on the paper and because they have obligations. For example, regarding Ukraine, we have many discussions there. Regarding, let's say, alleged Russian attacks on Poland, there have been discussions, should NATO use the force. But when Turkey uses the force against Greece, no one is talking that NATO or US should use the force. So it's political decision, always only political decision. And regarding Poland and Russia, there is such political decision, and regarding Turkey and Greece, there is no such political decision. So for Russians to make a political decisions, to intervene against Azerbaijanis and in favor of Armenians, it means, first of all, to face Turkish and Azerbaijani military contradiction, which is, as of now, very difficult for Russia. We know the so-called special military operation or Russian-Ukrainian war. That's first. And second, which is that relations are already spoiled between Armenia and Russia. So Pashinyan has completely spoiled Armenian and Russian relations. And after that, expecting Russian intervention would be hard. Let's be fair here. And after what he did in beginning of September, spoiling Russian-Armenian relations at every point where he could, Russian decision on this is still not justified, but at least could be expected. Now that's regarding who is to blame. Second part is, let's talk a bit on the official statement of Russian Foreign Ministry statement, which was published today. On one side, it has some truth in it, because obviously Pashinyan has started geopolitical games, which have put Armenian security under threat. And his decision to move away from Russia in favor of the West has been obvious, has been declared, and it is true, and it is reality. And it did not happen 2 weeks ago in reality. It happened much long ago. And even as of 2020, this decision has already been made. So that's one side. Another side of this statement, which is very problematic, is that they have written that Azerbaijanis wanted Armenians to move away their military from Artsakh. So this was one of main reasons of Azerbaijani attack these days. This is completely, let's say, a fake narrative. It's not Armenia. Armenia does not have forces, and local forces should not have been abandoned according to November 2020 agreement. So this narrative is fake. It's pro-Azerbaijani narrative. Unfortunately, Russia here plays on the victorious side, which is unfair and untrue. Now, regarding Pashinyan, Pashinyan speaking that Russian guarantees do not cost anything, and that he should seek for another guarantees. On one hand, he said Russia is abandoning region, abandoning Armenia. He has said that many times, and there is reality behind that. There is reality behind that. But on another hand, he did anything possible to remove Russia from Armenia. Starting from 2018, his policy was directly removing Russia from Armenia and decreasing level of Russian-Armenian relations. And let's face it, for Armenia, good relations with Russia matter much more than for Russia good relations with Armenia. And anyone who does not understand that has either very low-grade knowledge of international relations or special interests here. So Armenia had a very big interest in keeping relations with Russia, but Pashinyan has completely removed these relations. And again, I should quote Levon Zurabian here, who said a couple of days ago, he said that on September 2022, Pashinyan's government decided that if Russia is losing in Ukraine, and it is a time when Russians have left Kharkov and then Kherson, that means that Russia is already weak, and Armenia has good time to abandon relations with Russia. So now, if so, this means that Pashinyan has intentionally brought the situation to the point where neither Armenia nor Russia reacts on Turkish-Azerbaijani aggression against Artsakh and against Armenia. And then he can use this as an argument against Russia and in favor of abandoning Artsakh. So again, I'm going back to his connection with Turkey and to his contacts with Turkey, which he has many informally. So I think this is a big game which he started from the very beginning, and the result of losing Artsakh this way, with war, with casualties, was part of his plan.
Yeah, my main concern I was going to express is not that there is an administration here that is trying to change its foreign policy vector, but that none of the preparation work has been done, especially when Pashinyan is seeking an orientation towards the West. The West, the US and EU, have clearly said that they have no ability or no interest at present to defend Armenia physically. I mean, we are seeing support at the level of words, statements at the United Nations Security Council, the United Nations General Assembly, but there's never the kind of boots on the ground that Russia has to defend Armenia. There's nothing to substitute that relationship at this present, and suddenly the foreign policy orientation is trying to shift without any of that infrastructural needs met.
You are completely right. You are completely right. And talking of West replacing Russia today is inadequate because Russia might go, but the West will not come. Now, if so, let's think who will replace Russia in Armenia. And there is only one country in this region which can replace Russia in Armenia, and it is Turkey as of today, because also Pashinyan has done as much as possible to abandon relations with Iran. So let's say, in reality, Pashinyan is switching his orientation from Russia to Turkey, but not from Russia to the United States. Let's face this, which is very important. And Pashinyan is including Armenia into this east-west corridor and so on. The only concern why he does not want to have Zangezur corridor, it's not because it hurts Armenian sovereignty, because it does, and it is completely unacceptable. It's the only thing which I can agree with Pashinyan, that there should be no Zangezur corridor. But for Pashinyan, it's not that problem that Zangezur corridor is hurting Armenian sovereignty, but it's because Russians should be there. If no Russian troop will be there, then he will be okay with that. So again, we are talking about his alliance with Turkey, about his relations with Turkey, because Russia removing means Turkey coming, and it might be even worse. Turkey might come with force, or Russia might go with force, and there might be some more wars and so on. And of course, West will not come, because Americans did not leave Afghanistan to come to Armenia. If you don't have good connections, if United States are not present in Georgia physically, let's say, they do not have big ground base in Georgia. Mm-hmm. They have very, very limited presence in Georgia, and not more in Armenia. So if they don't have presence in Georgia, how can they be present in Armenia? Everyone who is affair with geopolitics and with international relations understands that. So if so, we are talking about Turkey being the next master of these relations, of this region.
Security.
Yeah, not only because economy as well, Turkey will dominate the regional economy as well.
Right.
And by the way, there have been publications that the day Azerbaijan was attacking Artsakh, Armenian government was discussing rebuilding economic relations with Turkey already. So they were waiting for destruction of Artsakh to start talking on economy with Azerbaijan and Turkey.
We probably didn't get to cover this in detail, but what happened last week, the tragedy, the humiliation, and that's ongoing right now as well, is causing a lot of people to hit the streets, to rise up. And it was initiated by students from Artsakh in the first 2 days, but later on it took a more institutional form, these protests, and they are being led by this new structure called the National Committee, which is in one sense similar to the homeland salvation movement that happened right after the war. It is an idea basically to force Pashinyan to resign and to rule Armenia for about a year or some period of time through a council of basically all legitimate leaders, technocrats, and based on their merit to achieve the greatest legitimacy possible. So yeah, they have, this has been picking up movement, and they are blocking streets. And what we're seeing is increased police brutality. Pashinyan's supporters, especially like Hrant Mikaelian, said that if necessary, they will shoot to protect state property or state buildings. And we're seeing hundreds of people arrested every day, and videos of people being beaten and bashed again. So the next few days will be very interesting. The goal of the protesters is to force Pashinyan's resignation by October 5th, which is when Pashinyan and Aliyev are meeting in Grenada. And Alen Simonian yesterday basically said that Armenia and Azerbaijan are very close to signing a peace deal after all that has been going on.
Hovik, does this protest movement look different from the salvation movement of 2021?
It's really difficult to say that. Some of the ideas are the same. So the 5 people I think announced already to be on the council include Vazgen Manukyan, Hrant Mikaelian, Ishkhan Sagatelian, the leader of the Mar Hayastan movement, Andranik Tevanyan, and so forth. So 5 people up to 11, 5 people out of 11 have been announced, and I don't know how the remaining people are going to get selected or elected. But I think one of the insinuation behind that is if things look the same, then we will have the same outcome. At least,
well, I hope that they've somehow learned from the mistakes they made in. Well, 21.
the mistake from 2021 was going for elections, because I think that's widely acknowledged to be the mistake. I don't think the opposition has even time to consider elections. I think basically it's either they remove Pashinyan by October 5th, a peace treaty is signed, and everything is lost, or at least that's what the protesters believe.
Does anyone know the exact parameters of this peace treaty?
From what we know, Azerbaijan wants the following. It's capitulation. It's not a peace deal, but let's list the issues which Azerbaijan wants. First of all, Azerbaijan wants the so-called exclave territories and the roads or maybe even territories connecting to them, which means that Armenia is losing many roads. For example, Tigran-Ashayn exclave, and then the exclaves in Tabush, and so on. So that's one thing, which is territorial. Second thing, Azerbaijan wants to recreate or to create Turkic communities in Armenia. They want to bring Turkish population to 300 settlements in Armenia. That's second. And most probably they will demand a Turkic police there in these settlements. Third is that they want the so-called Zangezur corridor. Then they want to legitimize the results of their aggression. So the recognition, full documentary recognition of territorial integrity, because what has been beforehand was just Pashinyan statements. And when Pashinyan, Aliyev, or Putin are quoting it, it's just statements, nothing else. But again, now Azerbaijan wants to have it on paper. And the other will most probably concern some economic relations and so on. So most probably Pashinyan's government has already agreed on passing more territory in so-called exclaves. That they have already agreed, and they have declared on that some half a year ago. Regarding recreation of communities, I don't know. Did Pashinyan agree on that or no? And so far, he does not agree on the so-called Zangezur corridor. And one more thing I want to say is when Pashinyan claims he is associated with independence and sovereignty of Armenia, which is, in my view, a very important issue. Pashinyan has for many years been following the fake narrative that issue of sovereignty of Armenia is connected to Russia. So because of Russia, Armenia is not sovereign. While in reality, Armenia's sovereignty threat is primarily Turkey, of course. And if not Turkey, let's look it wider. Any other foreign connection is hurting Armenian sovereignty. For example, when Armenia is copying EU institutions, it's also an issue of sovereignty. Of course, security relations of Russia is also an issue of sovereignty on one hand, but it's also security guarantee at least until 2022. And so I think the narrative where the Russians are threatening Armenia's security, not Turks, is completely fake, but it serves Pashinyan's goal of removing Russia from this region and bringing Turkey as a new leader of this region. This again reaffirms his political direction.
Okay, we're out of time for the day, so we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Hrant, for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Hrant.
Thank you.
That's our show this week. We hope you found it useful. Please follow us on social media. We'll talk to you next week.